All right, welcome back to the Copywriters Podcast with your host, the world's greatest copywriting coach, David Garfinkel. David, how are you doing today, man?
Great, Nathan. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and we're kind of going back to basics with today's episode, so I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, me too. I want to say right from the start, this is a manifesto and an expose. People ask me all the time, what do I do in my mentoring of copywriters and business owners? I mean, what did I do to earn the tagline, the world's greatest copywriting coach? I've decided to come clean. It's never been a secret, but now that I think about it, I just don't talk about it that much. In dribs and drabs, sure, but never the full Monty until today. Today's show is for two types of people. First, anyone who's interested in the kind of mentoring I do and might want to bring me on as a mentor. But second, anyone else who mentors copywriters or wants to. Look, there are far more people in this world who want to be mentored in copywriting than I'll ever be able to work with one-on-one. So if as a mentor, you can take my 10 rules of copywriting mentoring and put them to use with your own clients, have at it. This is an open invitation. And I'll start by being completely open about this. Copy is powerful. You're responsible for how you use what you hear on this podcast. Most of the time, common sense is all you need. But if you make extreme claims or if you're writing copy for offers in highly regulated industries like health, finance, and business opportunity, you may want to get a legal review after you write and before you start using your copy. My larger clients do this all the time. So Nathan, I'm giving away my secret sauce. If anybody thinks they can mentor the way I do, I would encourage it because, like I said, there are far more copywriters and business owners than I will ever be able to mentor personally. But I also want to answer the question I frequently get. Wait a minute, is that a cat behind you?
She's joining us for the show.
Oh, good. Hello, Kitty. How do you do what you do? People ask me. And some of my clients have gotten incredible results. Chris Haddad is the best known, and $1 Million Mike Morgan. I've had business owner clients who have added considerably to their bottom lines. I usually mentor clients for 1 year, but a lot of them stay on for longer. One, and I'll tell you more about that later, started out as a freelance writer and then started a business and made $100 million in sales the first month.
Wow.
Now, yeah, I mean, everyone's different, but one thing I can say is the work is transformative. People get a really solid foundation and some powerful skills working with me. So let's go on to the 10 rules now. Rule number 1, mentoring includes key activities, and the mentee has to analyze and reflect on the activities after they've done. This is really important. Now, copywriting is primarily a mental activity, and there is an interesting thing that sometimes you can get a lot better faster by looking at copywriting the same way as you would look at a physical activity. Think of a guitarist or a golfer. The guitarist needs to practice scales, riffs, chord progressions, and entire songs over and over again until they become second nature. A golfer needs to work on their swing and sometimes break the swing into smaller segments and work on those. Same idea as what a guitarist has to do. If you want to become a great copywriter, it's no different because practice and thoughtful reflection all lead to internalized excellence. With copywriting, you have a number of specific skills to improve on and hone. Coming up with hooks, writing headlines, telling stories, smooth transitions between different parts of copy, writing subheads in a sales letter that keep the reader's attention but also serve on their own as a high-level skeleton story for the skimmer, asking the right questions to get the right information, a number of other things. Now, the way you get good at those skills is through what's called deliberate practice, getting review and feedback to improve each individual skill and putting them all together in your finished copy. Some people say learning to write copy is much easier than that, and it is if you want to be a mediocre copywriter. But the copywriters who excel need to know what they're doing. And this knowledge comes not just from study or memorizing formulas or filling in templates, but from taking consistent action and reviewing the results. And because of that, they get constant ongoing improvement. Becoming a good copywriter is a form of personal growth. It requires effort and change. Sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's a little stressful. But when you take into account the power and freedom being a copywriter gives you in your life, it's more than worth any stress you have to go through.
I'm going to just add real quick, if you're a newbie copywriter or you're coaching a newbie copywriter, a lot of times they want to know, how do I get better at writing copy so I can get big clients that'll pay me a lot of money? My advice for that is find something and start selling it yourself. There's ClickBank offers, there's white label offers, there's maybe something you're passionate about. All of the stuff that you mentioned here, getting that feedback, putting it into action. If you can't find a client to help you do that, doing it yourself for something that you're selling yourself is probably the fastest way to learn this stuff.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's powerful stuff. Yeah. All right, let's move on to number 2. Mentoring is a long-term process to build up knowledge, skills, and what I call copywriting reflexes to become a truly excellent copywriter. I worked with a guy who was running a $100 million business but had never finished high school. You would never know that he hadn't been a good student. He couldn't write very well when we started, but he took the assignments I gave him seriously. He worked hard consistently, and the approach paid off for him. Not only did he get good enough to write world-class copy, but he also ended up writing a book by the time we were done working together. Beyond that, he credited $5 million in profits that his company made to our work together. Many people I've worked with have never been mentored before or have been mentored only in other kinds of things like sports or music. There's very little popular knowledge about what true mentoring is in our culture. People might imagine that the work involves these lightning bolts of sudden awareness that magically transforms them. And yeah, there are breakthroughs, there are aha moments like that, but most of the work is more incremental. The good news is even this kind of slow progress can be incredibly profitable in the short term. Joining my mentoring program is a commitment, but it is expressly designed to create tangible and lasting results.
I'm going to ask a question. You said a lot of people sign up for at least a year to get started. Is that part of this process is kind of dedicating at least that much time to get good?
Yeah, it is, because it's not a simple technical or mechanical thing. There's exploration and it takes a while.
Okay.
Number 3, mentoring is different from working under a copy chief in a business. It involves a commitment to learning skills and developing what I call the copywriter mindset, not just acquiring knowledge or improving on some copy you've written or launched after a promotion. The copywriter mindset's a real thing. You might say it's a way of looking at the world. You can have copywriting skill without having a true copywriter mindset. You can even create copy that works, but without the mindset, the copy can often come across as hollow and a little mechanical. High-level copy comes across as more human, and the copywriter mindset is what equips you to write high-level copy. This kind of copy connects you with your targeted prospect because of the perspective you write it from. Now, this is important. One reason AI will never replace high-level copywriters. It is possible to inform AI what a good ad looks like, but in the writing of good copy, there's a series of decisions, sometimes tough decisions, that a real copywriter has to go through to produce high-converting copy. You can't train AI to make those decisions, and here's why. As a high-level copywriter, each time you're going to draw on different experience and skills depending on what's at stake. So it's not like an algorithm you have for making the decisions. And, having this variability, this flexibility works for human, but it's very frustrating for AIs. Mentoring is the best way to build a foundation for the copywriter mindset quickly. You can certainly do it over time, but it's a lot longer and more frustrating. Mentoring ends up rewiring your mind to see things in the way Only a seasoned entrepreneur or copywriter can see them. You develop the ability to see into the mind of your market, your prospect, which includes understanding how these people feel and what they will respond to. One great example is the role of emotions in motivating people. Average copywriters are taught that people are mostly motivated by fear and greed. And someone who has a copywriter mindset will realize that's not always the case. Shame and guilt are powerful motivators in some cases, yet completely unimportant and actually toxic in others. Envy and jealousy can end up being a more powerful motivator than simple greed in certain situations. Altruism is often a very ineffective appeal, but understanding the exceptions, both in terms of different niches and also in terms of certain types of altruism that are nearly irresistible, understanding this can make a huge difference for a copywriter, even when the offer has nothing to do with making a donation to a charity. In schools, teachers often assume this: if I teach you the principle, then you'll know how to apply it automatically or figure it out quickly. And that's not true in the real world. And it's certainly not true in copy. Application is a whole learning curve in and of itself. Mentoring can help you organize and direct your thinking in a way so you can get good at it on your own and feel confident about your ability to solve this kind of problem in any situation. Except for too few top schools in subjects like medicine, engineering, and law, classroom instruction never teaches you how to apply what you learn in the real world. And not knowing how to do certain advanced things can put a firm ceiling on a copywriter's or a business owner's career.
Hmm. There's a lot to think about there, so I'm not going to jump in. I'm just going to move it to the next topic.
Yeah, but did we scare your cat away? I don't see it.
She jumped on the table and started playing with the wire, and then the camera went out. That was the glitch
Oh,
right
that
there.
was why the camera went out. Okay, it was a cat event. All right. Number 4, mentoring can seem to go in a nonsensical direction, but an experienced mentor is always deliberate about what they're doing, and the mentor may use methods the mentee doesn't always understand at the time. Let's start with a mechanical analogy. If your car is not driving straight ahead, there's an obvious reason for someone who doesn't work with cars all day. They'll say something's wrong with the tires. I mean, why else would the car pull to the right all the time? Now, to be sure, uneven tread or tire pressure could be the cause, but an experienced mechanic will know that it could be a problem with the brakes or the front end alignment. It also could be there's a worn out part in the steering. Now, imagine your car kept pulling to the right and you kept replacing the tires. Meanwhile, obsessively checking air pressure every few hours to make sure it was the same on all 4 tires. If everything checked out and your car still kept pulling to the right and you just kept repeating the same solution, you would literally be spinning your wheels.
Hmm.
An experienced and well trained mechanic knows there could be an obvious direct solution to your problem, as well as a more indirect, less obvious one. A mentor works in the same way. Though a human being is not a car and a mentor is not an auto mechanic, a copywriting mentor knows from training and experience that some solutions to problems are obvious and direct, and some require a more investigative and innovative approach. Okay, here's a couple examples. One of my clients did a lot of copy for alternative medicine supplement companies. He was a very good writer, but sometimes he got a little too bogged down in the weeds with scientific explanation of how biochemistry worked in the body when you took the supplement. One assignment I gave him was to read a comedy book and write some jokes. He had a natural sense of humor and he was good natured in conversation, but that part of his personality hadn't made it through to his writing. After the comedy exercises, his writing lightened up and his income skyrocketed. He didn't start putting jokes in his copy, but the overall tone was lighter, more engaging. He started a company with a partner selling custom formulated supplements, and their sales were over $1 million the first month. And he has had 7 and 8 figure years since then.
Wow.
And the point is not that he made all that money. The point is, it's something was holding him back that would not be obvious or direct, and an indirect solution broke it up and let him break through to the next level. I'll give you another example. I had a client. Oh, she's back. Your cat. I see her. I had another client, very bright guy, but very young, not that experienced, who would start to go off on tangents when he was close to coming to a copy decision. And this habit was really slowing him down, taking him extra hours, many extra hours on projects, and not doing him any good. And he knew it, but he didn't know what to do about it. In one session, I used a Socratic method type of coaching where I only allowed him to answer yes or no to questions to keep his mind from wandering. I used leading questions, but I took him down a clear, logical path to a conclusion he had already told me about, but he liked, but then he'd started doubting it and considering alternatives. I knew that in this case, his first idea was completely on target, but he didn't. He probably thought it was much more reasonable to consider many possibilities rather than accept his own good idea. I had seen this as a habit he had, kept repeatedly getting in his way and slowing down his productivity. And really, at the end of the day, this was a form of procrastinating. So, with the Socratic yes no thing, by giving him the experience of having a clean, narrow set of decisions to get to a conclusion he had already reached before, but then backed away from, I was helping him develop a simpler and more accurate decision process. And it worked. He started becoming more decisive and having better experiences talking with his clients as well. So, a lot of times people look for what's known as the Occam's razor answer. Occam's razor says the simplest solution is the best one. And by the way, it usually is, but sometimes it isn't. And when it isn't, that doesn't always mean you need another direct, simple solution. Sometimes you need to go the long way around the barn, as the saying goes. Mm-hmm. And part of the skill of the mentor is knowing when simple and straightforward is the way to go, and when solving a problem requires a slightly more creative approach.
I think what I really like about this is sometimes people just want to be told what to do. They want the instructions, stick it in the microwave, push this button, this button, this button, wait 3 minutes. But sometimes people want to actually internalize. They want to come to that aha moment where they're like, oh, this is my idea. And if you just tell people what to do, it might work for some people, it might work in some situations, but to really have it become a part of them, to have them adopt the idea, the concept as part of their own internal thinking processes, then you have to go through these creative, you mentioned the Socratic method, where you lead them to the answer. Instead of telling them the answer, you help them come to it themselves. Then it becomes part of who they are. And then it's a lot more long-lasting, impactful, and powerful.
Yeah, right. When they get to own it, when it's theirs. Yeah, really good way of looking at it. Thank you. All right, number 5. My form of mentoring only works with people who've already taken some action and gotten some results with copy, whether they are freelancers or business owners. I can't work with beginners or people without at least a few years' experience. One of the things about copywriting is no matter how smart or how knowledgeable you are, no matter how good a learner you are, you can't get very far without desire, motivation, and continuous action fueled by that desire and motivation. This has been consistently true with all kinds of people from all walks of life, from all continents, all over the earth, in my experience in 20 years. In my early days, I mentored people who were interested in copywriting, but never wanted to roll up their sleeves and get into action. I was unable to help them do anything more than just check the boxes, and it was never a good use of time for either one of us. Mm-hmm. One way to understand what I'm talking about here is for someone to work with me, they need to have traction and momentum. Otherwise, results are not likely. As a high-level copywriter, one thing you have to do is perform under pressure. And that includes dealing with a lot of unexpected situations and rapid shifts in direction. It's just the nature of the marketing world, especially these days. In the last week, One of my clients had to do an emergency email campaign less than 24 hours before a client's webinar to raise the registration somebody else had only gotten to 24 and raised it to 160. Another client had to reschedule a call with me to fix a sudden denial of service attack on one of his clients' websites. A third client had to completely revamp his advertising right away because one of his niches, a six-figure niche, suddenly new regulations could have knocked them out of the market, maybe even gotten them in trouble. That's what I mean by performing under pressure. It happens. Nathan, I'm sure you've been through this more than once. And that's why having some fundamentals and some practice and some repetition and some reflection and review and correction beforehand, some simulation, having all that under your belt is so important so that you'll be ready, confident, and solid when these things occur.
I think also the point about knowing who you can work with and who you're not good to work with. For me, there's a bunch of qualifications as well. When I take on a client, their list has to be a certain size, their traffic has to be, they have to be spending a certain amount of money or up in advertising each month. Otherwise, instead of making them money, I'm just going to cost them money because they don't have the assets in place to leverage what I can do for them. I have heard, I think a guest on this show actually one time said, I'm great at taking people from 60 to 100, not so great at taking people from 1 to 60. And that sounds kind of like you figured out that as well. You're not for the 1 to 60 people, you're for the 60 to 100 people.
Yeah, that's true. And there are people who are great at taking people from 1 to 60. That's just not me. It's not like there's no help for those people. It's like, I don't know who they are, but they're out there and they're good. And, you know, so that's who I'm looking for, though, and who should be looking for me. So, rule number 6, mentoring is designed to help copywriters and business owners develop solid, confident, and independent thinking. However, and this might seem like a little bit of a paradox, to be a successful mentee, a person needs to be able to follow specific instructions exactly and complete assignments the way I explain the assignments. One thing you learn pretty quickly when results are on the line, that is when money spent either to run your copy as paid ads or to get paid traffic to a website you've written, is that a lot of what you used to think before you got into copy, marketing, and sales, a lot of what you used to think is simply wrong. For one thing, the kind of writing you were taught and praised for in school and in business and in the military, if you served, it just won't work for copy that sells. There are many, many other things that will surprise you as you slowly transform into a powerful, results-oriented copywriter. Arguing about these things or trying variations of them or trying to disprove them when you first learn them is not a good idea. Why? Because you are learning tested and proven principles. You're essentially remodeling your mindset, not for your whole life, but for strategizing as a direct marketer and for writing copy. Once you have internalized the basics and are operating from a good solid foundation, then there's plenty of room for debate, independent thinking, trying out your own ideas. But first, you got to learn the ropes. And there's a good chance that more than a little of what you'll be learning is contrary to what you thought, but never actually knew from experience. It's true. There are certain words, phrasings, structures, sequences that work. Many copywriters are creative people by nature. Many business owners are a little stubborn and strong-willed. You may fit into one or both of these categories, and either one isn't going to naturally love following instructions exactly. But if you decide to do your own version of things that will work before you know why they will work, how they work, and what you can change and what you can't, you'll never build the strong foundation you need to think clearly about copy and direct marketing, especially in a red flag situation.
I just think of the old saying, in order to effectively break the rules, you have to first understand the rules. And when learning copywriting, It's definitely a whole different set of rules than what you learn in high school or college or business or, like you said, the military. There's a whole new set of rules to learn, and then once you learn them, then you can start playing around with them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on. Rule number 7. A mentoring client must be in a position to make back the mentoring fee, which is substantial,
Mm.
during the year the mentoring takes place. How would that happen? It means that improvements you make during the mentoring could reasonably be expected to open up new ideas, lead to higher fees, and greater profits. So let's talk about the difference between static and dynamic. And this is kind of the 1 to 60 and 60 to 100 thing you were talking about, Nathan. If you want to get a boulder rolling and it's not moving, then it's static and it takes a lot of energy and intention
Mm.
just to get it rolling. But once the boulder is in motion, it's dynamic, and giving it a little push can get it moving a lot faster. Same thing with copywriting mentoring. A newbie is usually struggling to write even serviceable copy and find clients. And though that person is not literally motionless, they are, for all practical purposes, static. A lot of things need to happen before they can start to get good. Compare that to an active copywriter with some wins and, to be sure, some losses under their belt. Going from good to great is still a heavy lift, but it's much more doable if the person is in the game and has some existing momentum to build on. It's increasing this momentum that leads to the higher income, better opportunities, higher quality clients. Those kind of improvements are what my clients and I are both looking for. And it's preferable to have a better than even chance to make those improvements right from the start of the mentoring.
Mm.
I had a client that almost always doubled response rates and more than doubled profits on promotions he and I had gone over after he'd already run the promotion. We'd make a few key changes. His work was already good to begin with. We were able to take it to the next level. And while it's not part of the service I offer, not something I promise I can do, sometimes I'll suggest a tagline or a positioning strategy for a mentoring client. Some of my most successful ones accepted the suggestions and are now famous within their niche for these suggestions. I did that for $1 Million Mike Morgan. And when someone referred in an email to Chris Sadat as Money Fingers, I said, that's it. Use those words. And he did for his branding now. I think he even has a company called Money Fingers LLC or Money Fingers Inc.
I don't have much to add to that. I just think it's all good stuff.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's keep going. Rule number 8, if you want to learn to write better copy, you're going to have to read copy that's better than the copy you're writing now. At first, you're going to have to read a lot of it, less over time, but always on a regular basis. So listen, if direct response marketing copy were just another version of the prose we see every day on news websites, TV commercials, blogs, and in books, then it would probably not be all that important to immerse yourself in DR marketing copy right from the start of a mentoring program. But direct response copy uses the kind of language that we're used to hearing, and if we're persuaders, salespeople, we're used to using in spoken form, but we're not all that used to seeing it in written form. It isn't in written form in really any other field I can think of. So our built-in context for reading and writing are different. And to change or at least fine-tune that context, you need to have repeated exposure to the very best example of copy that sells. Not one or two ads, not just an outstanding sales letter or two, lots of it. So you can develop an informed awareness of what this looks like, and in the case of your own finished copy, what it should look like.
Okay, so my 2 cents on this one, whenever I take on a new client in a new niche, one of the first things that I do is I find out who their perfect competition is, and I start heavily trafficking their websites and spending a lot of time on their websites. That tricks Google and YouTube into showing me the ads that are for that target demographic. And then I keep my ads on YouTube on, and I see which ads do I get served over and over again, because those are the ones that are working. Which ads are lasting more than a week, more than 2 weeks? Those are the ones that are working. And then those are the ones that I start paying attention to, examining, breaking down, looking how they go from piece to piece. And so kind of doing that deep dive and then paying attention. Now that the algorithm knows I'm paying attention to this market, what gets shown to me repeatedly? And that's my first kind of starting point on where to start looking for what works.
Yeah, that's very smart. It's it's really sort of advanced and very good. All right, let's rule number 9. You must accept the practice of mastery and understand the better you get, the longer it takes between noticeable improvements. But that doesn't matter as much as you think, because this kind of incremental training also builds in fundamental skills and confidence that won't backslide in you and will hold up really well under pressure. So, mastery is a concept that is not well understood. So, let me explain a few things. First, mastery is not a destination, it's a journey. Though we commonly refer to high achievers as masters, people who are truly committed to mastery understand that you never actually get there. You can become very, very good at something, even the greatest of all time, like Tom Brady. But as long as you're in the game, the work continues to take place, and life never truly becomes easy street. You have to make some commitments and sacrifices to be on the path of mastery. And the rewards far outweigh the cost, the pains, the inconvenience, because you'll inevitably end up better, more highly skilled, better compensated, more highly regarded than most people in your field, in this case, in copywriting, because most people are never willing to make the commitment to do the work to get on the path of mastery in the first place.
Hmm. What I think about is all the friends on Facebook or LinkedIn that I had that 3 years ago, 5 years ago, they were an expert copywriter, and now they're a real estate investment guru, or now they're a Bitcoin trading guru. And there's a few of them that stuck with copywriting, and they're great A-list, B-list copywriters. But the people that don't have the grit to stick to it and do this commitment to mastery that you're talking about, that's the only way that you're ever going to be a master copywriter or a master copywriting coach, is to put in that work, those years of learning and relearning and constantly evolving. And it's not a quick fix like a lot of people I think are promised when they first get into copywriting.
Yeah, and it occurs to me there's another thing. It keeps you young. I mean, look at John Williams. He's what, 90 years old, keeps doing it, keeps doing it. I just named a building after him at one of the studios. All right, back to this. Number 10, an important rule for mentoring is progress, not perfection. Yeah, I know that's also from the 12-step program. As long as you are making the effort and really seeking to improve your copy game consistently, that's enough. Excellence is always a far better target than perfection. Nobody ever really knows they have written a perfect sales letter or ad just before they publish it. I can't count the number of times people were so confident something would work and it bombed. I also remember I wrote a sales letter for a client that ended up making over $1 million in 2 days. But that was after it broke the server. And beforehand, I was so nervous ahead of time and deeply afraid it would bomb. So please understand, there is no such thing as a perfect copywriter. Even the most accomplished fail on 1 or 2 attempts out of every 5 they make. That's just the way this business goes. You want to use the proven principles, techniques, and offers, but there are so many factors you can't control, including the fact that if what you have written is too new or too much like what the prospect has already seen, it won't be appealing. So there are a couple of ways mentoring can give you an advantage here. One, you'll learn how to limit your risk and increase the chances that you'll do well. Two, you'll get support and practical techniques to help you bounce back after a disappointment. Motivational speaker W. Mitchell has a famous saying, "It's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it." A
Hmm.
lot of wisdom in those 12 words. The best thing you can do to grow in these ways is to take consistent action on as much as a daily basis. But oddly, the results rarely show up as consistently as the action you need to take. If you've never had mentoring like this before, you might find this description of progress a little surprising, but it's real and it's an important part of the journey.
Mm. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up with two thoughts that I have. Number one, as somebody who's being mentored, you get the advantage of someone who's not stuck in the frame with you and they can see the picture from a different angle. They can see the whole picture, and that is always beneficial. Also, as somebody who's mentored and coached, a lot of times being able to see it from that outside perspective and being able to work with maybe 3 or 4 different people at a time in different niches, you start to see things from client A that have overlap with what client B is struggling with. And you start to be able to put things together that if you were stuck only copywriting in one niche and not working with different people, you wouldn't be able to see those things. You wouldn't be able to make those connections. So in kind of a weird synchronistic way, this whole idea of copywriting coaching helps the coach and helps the copywriter in ways that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my clients has a particular way of writing I've never heard of or seen anywhere else that I really like. That's really hard to do. To it just requires such a mental shift. But I've started using it in some of my social media posts to promote my book, and one of those posts just got reposted by somebody who has 100,000 followers. So I think, yeah. I mean, and by the way, this client has been encouraging me to do this, and it's been really hard. I've tried and tried and tried, and finally got it. So, but yeah. Also, I mean, that what I do, what I want my clients to be able to do. I can remember something from a different situation and say, try this. And I want them to remember something from a different copy approach, or even something different. Learn to think that sort of associative way to remember a different situation and think laterally to apply it to this one.
Okay, so as we're out of here, I'm going to say go back and listen to this episode again because it was just so jam packed with great little golden nuggets. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you only listen once. And if you want to catch more episodes like this, head on over to copywriterspodcast.com. We got a bunch of great episodes over there as well. And until next time, we will catch you later.
We'll catch you later.